All right, well, we're here at Krause's Cafe. Our speaker, his legacy goes back to the original Krause's Cafe. Somewhere in his ancestry, granddad, great uncle started this restaurant. It is named for the same family that Ryan's a part of. Now, when most of us know the Snyder family owns it now. In fact, Ron Snyder, when I first went to him and we arranged that we're going to start this once a month gathering, and yeah, it's going to have a Christian flavor to it. Actually, Ron Snyder very quietly was very pleased, and he said, that's just great. It was about a year into it, he came to me one time and said, keep it going. Roundup has changed who we are here at Krause's. People know that we now do Christian events. In fact, remember, he started a gospel brunch. So Ron was thrilled that we brought Roundup to his cafe, and we still are. Well, Ron Krause is going to be here with us tonight. Let me tell you just a little bit about him. He's a brat. His dad was in the Navy, and he grew up, he was born somewhere like Naples, Italy, or man, it must have been in Southern Command. But he came to New Braunfels when he was about 8 years old, and he was here ever since. Went to school here, Canyon High School, did a little bit of college time in B College and San Antonio College. He's been in ministry. He's been both a youth pastor and an executive pastor. His wife is Bridget. His mom's here tonight. Thank you, Mom Krause, for being here. He and Bridget have 2 kids and 3 grandkids, I believe. Okay, I won't tell you I got 12, but that's okay. But I'm a lot older. Years are still coming. What Ron is really about these days is in the last 10, 15 years, he and his wife, they run an executive coaching leadership organization, LLC. Companies will call him and say, come help us be better. And he'll gather the staff, the company, and he tells them right up front, I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about how you work with each other, how you communicate, your spiritual life. So it's understood right up front that you're going to get a little faith in this deal. And he's taken a lot of companies. He has to turn them down because there's too many of them wanting he and his wife to come coach them up. You know, we've had a guy who coaches people up, haven't we? Jerry Leachman's been here a couple times. So we're just getting a young version of Jerry Leachman here in Ron Krause. Ron will talk about his life. He's going to talk about the next step ahead, which I'll reiterate afterwards. But help me bring to the stage, around upstage, Ron Krause. Ron, come up, please.
Thank you, sir. Wow. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's quite an honor to be here. Thank you, General Brown, for trusting me with your stage. And I know General Brown enough to know that he's like, that's not my stage. But God's entrusted him with it. And he's been an amazing steward of what God's given him. And so I'm honored to be up here. When I look at the crowd, I think, man, what am I doing up here? I've had the opportunity to meet some of you and hear your stories and talk to you and know what your life has been. And I think, man, I should be sitting right there learning from you. And so I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much. And then I think, I met General Brown at lunch one time, and I thought, wow, this is an amazing man. We just hit it off right off the bat, and I thought, this is such an amazing man. And then I met Ann, and I thought, well, no wonder he's an amazing man. He's got Ann Brown behind his back and holding him up and supporting him. And so thank you, Ann. You've been absolutely amazing. We are blessed to know you all and to be a part of this journey. And so Well, I think about General Brown asked me to share who I am and what got me to where I am. And I thought, who I am is really everything that brought me to the man that is standing in front of you today. And so I thought, I'll share a little bit of my journey with you. And I got to tell you, we didn't have a lot to do with Krause's restaurant. When we moved back here, my dad was Navy. And so I was born in Naples, Italy. And as they say, I got here as fast as I could, but I didn't have a whole lot of control over that. But in 1976, we moved back here. I was 8 years old. And as much as I had to do with Krause's was I forced my mom to buy me T-shirts and have Krause put on the back of them because I was proud to be a Krause's. And every time we came to Krause's Cafe, I made sure I had my Krause's shirt on. And it was really interesting because nobody ever noticed that I had a Krause shirt on. I was just totally ignored, and that just wasn't right. And tonight, I'm walking in there to go to the restroom, and I have this badge on my shirt that says Ryan Krause, and one of the wait staff stopped me and said, "Are you the owner?" It's all about timing, right? Yeah, right? I should have said, "Yes, will you bring me?" No, but growing up here in New Braunfels, Texas, it was quite a journey. I guess one of my first memories that made me who I am, I'm so grateful to have my mom here in the audience with us. It's really, to be honest with you, it's a miracle that she's here with us. And once again, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble because I did not ask permission to share this, but July 10th of 2024, my mom and I sat in the doctor's office, and he said, "You've got ovarian cancer, and you've got about 2 or 3 months to live." My wife always tells me don't do math in front of people, and so I'm trying to add up those months. That's about 1.5 years ago. She shouldn't be with us any longer, and she's here with us tonight, and so I'm very, very grateful for that. My wife says I get my stubbornness, how do you say it? You get your stubbornness honest. That's the word she uses. That apparently means generational. My mom is stubborn, and so I'm stubborn. She doesn't do anything the doctors tell her to do. But one day we were going to Kmart. We went to Kmart, and my mom loved Kmart. You guys remember when Kmart was across the street from where H-E-B is now? H-E-B was downtown. Kmart was over there. There was, actually, that was even before Walnut 6 existed, which has been there and gone now. But there was a Kmart over there on that side of town. And we went there, we bought some things, I don't even remember what we bought, but we went through the checkout stand. We paid for it, we got in the car, we're on the way home, we're pulling in the driveway. And I'm sure I'm sharing some story about how I'm going to save the world. My mom looks over at me and she goes, "Where did you get that?" I pull the Tootsie Pop out of my mouth, and I was like, "At the store?" She goes, "Did you pay for that?" I was like, "I thought you did." Now, what was crazy is she didn't think about it. She didn't sit there contemplating what to do next. Before I knew it, she put it in reverse and we're backing out of the driveway. We drove all the way back across town, went to Kmart, and my mom said, "My son walked out with a Tootsie Pop and I'd like to pay for that." A 5-cent Tootsie Pop. And my mom explained to me, "You don't take things that don't belong to you." And I learned that day what integrity was all about. And I've carried that with me ever since. And I learned that integrity isn't based on what you think of me. It's what I think of me. Integrity is not based on what others think of me. It's based on what I think of me. And when I think about that, and I think about where we are today, I think, wow. We're in a place where social media, I want to call Facebook facade book, because it's all a facade. It's all what I want you to think of me. It's all putting on an image that isn't who I really am. I love my wife too much to do this, but I want to get on Facebook and tell about all the bad times I've had, the bad decisions I've made. I want to put the ugliest pictures of me on Facebook and see how that comes across. It probably wouldn't do good for my future. But it's crazy when you think about integrity is based on what you think of you, yet we have a society that builds up this whole idea, this whole concept of creating an image that's not even a real image. It's not the real me. And I think when my kids were younger, my son used to buy games, and the whole point of the game was to learn the cheats of the game. I don't know if any of your kids did that or your grandkids are doing that. I've got grandkids now. I think my grandson's 13, or he is 13, but I think he's into video games as much as his dad was. And the whole concept is, how do I cheat the game? What are we teaching our kids? When we're propping up this false reality, this false world, where my whole self-worth is based on my likes on social media, my follows on social media. I'll get into it in just a minute, but I've made a decision recently, and I met with a consultant based on this decision, and the consultant was, well, the first thing you have to do is get a lot of followers on Facebook. It doesn't even mean anything. Just followers on Facebook. So we're building this false world where we wonder why our kids today are struggling, and we try to make all these excuses and all these reasons when it goes back to this simple core value of integrity. Be who you say you're going to be. Do what you say you're going to do. And treat others, golden rule, right? Treat others the way that you would like to be treated. I learned that way back from my mom, and I'm so grateful for her. And my mom's my hero. I could stay here and talk about her for an hour, but I'll move on. So, I was in... I think I was in third grade. I'm embarrassed to share this with you because Ann was talking to me about personalities earlier and everything, and I'm a very analytical personality, and so I'm going to stand in front of people and tell you that I was not doing well in math in third grade. I refused to learn my multiplication tables. Miss Schultz insisted that I know my multiplication tables. Now, the rest of the class was learning division and on the fractions, and Ryan sitting in the back of the class refusing to learn his multiplication tables. And one day I'm sitting in class and I was minding my own business and folding paper airplanes. And I think I was doing pretty well until one of my objects of flight hit Kathy Miner in the back of the head. "Ryan Krause, you get up here this instant." I walked to the front of the class and she says, "You're a disruption to this class. You go sit in study hall." Now this was not a good thing because Miss Reinhardt was a lot meaner than Mrs. Schultz was. And so I go sit in study hall, and I'm sitting in there, and Miss Reinhardt was going to inflict the multiplication tables upon me. To no avail. I was successful. I was stubborn, remember? And I refused to learn these simple multiplication tables. And one day I'm sitting there, minding my own business mostly, and in comes walking Miss Callahan. Miss Callahan was this young college student. She was going to Southwest Texas State University, learning to be a teacher. And she got blessed with the enviable task of teaching Ryan Krause the multiplication tables. So she comes over and she sits at my desk. She sits across from me and she goes, "So Ryan, tell me about you." "What? You don't want to know why I've been imprisoned in study hall? You don't want to know why Mrs. Schultz hates me? You don't want to know why these multiplication tables are stupid? I just want to know about you. What do you do when you go home?" I was in shock. Why was she asking me these questions? So this is a cute college girl. And so I couldn't tell her that I was into building model cars because that's just weird. So I said, "Well, me and my friends, we build these forts. We dig holes in the ground, and then we put plywood over the top, and we cover them with dirt. And then out of the little hole at the end, we shoot bottle rockets at each other because that makes us really cool." Now, to a third grade boy, this makes all the sense in the world because this is going to impress a college girl. But she's like, "Yeah, what? So tell me what else. What else do you do?" "Oh, well, I swim. We live on the Guadalupe River, and I swim every day. You got to keep in shape." Now, I'm sure I weighed about 80 pounds at the time. And she's looking at me kind of funny, and she's like, "No, tell me what else. What do you do?" I couldn't stand the barrage of questions, so I finally said, "Well, I build model cars." And she's like, "Oh, That's it. Tell me about that. Tell me what you do. And I'm telling her, man, I take a toothpick and I do the little details on the dash, and I take thread and I make the wires in the engine compartment. And man, I just go all out on these model cars. And she's like, ooh, that's fascinating. Tell me more. Tell me more. And for an hour, I'm telling her about building model cars. And finally she says, well, what's the next model you want to build? I said, oh, that's the 1929 Ford Roadster pickup. It's got a yellow cab with a wood stake bed and Krause SS Ram or SS Krause SS rims. And she goes, oh, well, where would you buy a thing like that? I said, oh, well, it's at Kmart, aisle 13, second row from the top, halfway down. She's like, okay. And then she drops the hammer. She said, I'll tell you what, Ryan, you learn your multiplication tables, and I'll buy you that model. I'm like, wow. Now, people have tried to bribe me before, but there's something different here. She actually cared. She was actually listening. And if it wasn't evident by then, I went home, I had new inspiration. I went home and I called Richard down, because Richard is a geek, and he came down and he's quizzing me on the multiplication tables. And I'd learned a pretty good amount of it, but I didn't have the whole thing down. I walked into class the next day. I'm sitting in study hall, or I walk into study hall. Miss Callahan is sitting at my desk. I'm like, what is going on? So I walk over there, and on the desk in front of her is a 1929 Ford Roadster pickup by Monogram. And right beside it is a 1934 Ford 5-window coupe, suicide doors and a rumble seat. And I'm like, what is this? And she goes, well, I know you can learn the multiplication tables. And you told me that your dad has a real 1934 Ford. And you said that it's a 5-window with suicide doors and a rumble seat. Is that right? And I said, well, yeah. And she goes, well, I just thought you should have a model like your dad's car. I was like, wow. And she said, but you've got to know your multiplication tables by Friday in order to get both of them. The next day, on Wednesday, 2 days early, I walked in and I recited the multiplication tables 1 through 10 perfectly, because somebody was willing to listen to me. Somebody was willing to look me in the eye and hear what interests me. Now, I had 2 German women that were fully capable. Some of you know some German women. They were able to inflict the multiplication tables on me. They knew them inside and out. They had the degree, they had the position, they had the title, but somehow they couldn't move me to action. And yet this young college student cared about me enough to get me to learn the multiplication tables. Now, speaking of women that had an influence on my life, my grandmother was a pretty strong German woman. And I used to walk across town to go visit her. My dad was in the Navy, and he would take these 9-month cruises, and so he was gone a lot. My mom worked full-time at Randolph Air Force Base. And so during the summer, I'd walk over to my grandmother's house, and I'd spend the day with her and my cousin. And one day multiple times I mowed her lawn, and she was very generous. That's the great thing about grandparents, is I was sitting in her air conditioning. I was drinking her iced tea. I was eating her food. And she asked me to use her lawnmower and her gas to mow her lawn, which was about the size of a postage stamp. So I mowed it that day, and guess how much she paid me? It's not going to sound like much today, but she gave me $10. Now, this was in the late 70s. I think gas was probably 50 to 60 cents a gallon. Philip's going, gas has never been that cheap. She paid me $10. Now, here's what happened that day. It just so happened that my dad came back in town that day. So he comes over and he picks me up. He wants to take me to lunch. So we drive down to Orlando Park. We go to Dairy Queen. We order our Hunger Buster meal. And for 2 Hunger Buster meals, it was $5 and something cents. And my dad looks at me, and I look at my dad, and my dad looks at me, and he goes, well, aren't you going to pay? What? He goes, well, you got $10, didn't you? Now, some of the men out here are going, good for him. Teach that boy a lesson. I was 10. I was like, what in the world? What do you mean I'm going to pay? I just made this money. And he goes, yeah, and you should buy me lunch. Man, I was mad. I didn't understand. I went home mad. Next day, I walk over to my grandmother's house again, and I think, man, I'm going to tell my grandmother all about this. It was her son. I mean, what is he thinking? So I tell her about it, and I said, man, I walk all the way over here. I mow your lawn. And the grass was taller than normal, and so it was hard to mow. And with that incline, wow, I mean, that's just hard to mow. And then I had to weave in and out of the bushes. Man, that was a lot of work. And she's looking at me with this compassion. There might have even been a tear in her eye or something. And she goes, well, go back to that first part. I'm like, what? I'm thinking, man, I'm going to make $20 out of this ordeal. She goes, that first part, how did you get over here? I said, well, I had to walk all the way across town. Now, back then, town was about 2.5 miles. And I said, I had to walk all the way across town. And she goes, where'd you get the shoes? Some of you got it. I didn't understand her at first, but she went on to explain to me. She said, your parents bought you the shoes that you used to walk over here. And that day I understood legacy. That day I understood that people went before me. People have carved a path for me. People have sown into my life so that I can do what I do. That started that day with Omi. That's what we call German grandmothers. Omi taught me that lesson that day. And I think about this crowd, and I think so many of you. My wife and I teach a lesson called gratitude, where we talk about the energy of gratitude. And when it's gratitude that motivates us, we show up differently. And as a part of that lesson, I share with them that I wake up in the morning, and I stare at the ceiling, and I tell God 5 things that I'm grateful for every single day. And one of the things that I'm grateful for just about every single morning is being able to wake up in this country. A country that allows me to be whatever it is I want to be. A country that allows me to come to a place like this, a venue like this, on a Tuesday night with an amazing crowd like this and say, I love Jesus. It's not every country that we can do that. Many of you know that. Many of you paid a huge price in order for me to do that. Thank you. And that's why I say, man, I'd rather be sitting there listening to so many of you. Because you've done amazing things to allow me to live the life that I live. And I appreciate you. But it wasn't always women that sowed into my life. I remember, before I go to the men that sowed in my life, there was a woman who actually told me I couldn't do what I wanted to do. See, my friend and I, we were rock and roll legends. We were amazing. We were touring all the time. We were doing multiple shows a week. And we were on top of the world. We were doing these shows, and girls are just screaming. That's all that's important to a 7th grade boy, right? Is the girls. And yes, we were in 7th grade. And boy, you'll get a kick out of this. I may be losing some support here tonight. Picture this, if you will. My outfit was black parachute pants. Anybody remember the white K-Swiss high tops? And a black mesh shirt with red bands across the shoulders. And I had long blonde hair at the time. And I'm really losing support here. I had this alligator clip with a leather band on it with feathers hanging on it that would hang from my left ear. You guys remember the rock and roll bands from the 80s, the big hair bands? Well, that was me, and I was a rock and roll legend. And Richard, he was the meanest air guitar player you'd ever seen. Yeah, we were rock and roll legends in my mom's living room. Listening to REO Speedwagon, singing at the top of our lungs. I was a dreamer, and I knew that I was just going to be a rock and roll legend, and life was going to be amazing. And you know, what is a rock and roll star to do with all of this talent that God's blessed him with? I go marching into the choir room, And Miss Stotzenberger was our choir teacher. You guys are like, was this a German school or what? Miss Stotzenberger was our choir teacher. And she was so excited that somebody wanted to come in and try out for the choir. And I just thought, wow, you're really going to be blessed. I'm going to loan you my talents to bless this choir. And she goes over to the piano and she's like, all right. Well, what's your favorite song? And so I start naming some REO Speedwagon songs and probably some Black Sabbath songs and probably some Triumph songs. And she's like, how about a Christmas song? Do you know a Christmas song? And I'm like, well, sure I do. And she goes, can you sing Silent Night? And so she starts playing, I start singing, Silent night, holy night, all is calm. And I couldn't even finish the second line, and she scoots back on her bench, and she looks up at me, and she says, have you ever thought about trying out for the band? Now, that was obviously a great idea, because what's a 7th grade choir teacher, how's she going to improve on perfection like I had? And you guys are thinking, well, the quartet that we listened to last month was a little better than that. But she set me straight. She didn't allow me to continue on a journey or a thought or something that I thought I wanted to pursue. She was willing and courageous enough to say, no, this probably is not your future. And then there was David. And it's funny because both of the guys' names were David. I'm using real names because I don't like to protect the innocent. So when I'd walk over to my grandmother's house, I'd walk down to Landa Park frequently too, and my friends and I hung around Landa Park. And one day we're down there, and I'm a clean freak, and we're looking at the paddle boats, and I'm noticing the leaves and the dirt and everything else. And so I go over to the owner of the paddle boats, whose name was David, and I said, hey, David, I tell you what, for $5 I'll clean the paddle boats. And he's like, well, all right, let's go. So I cleaned the paddle boats, and then my friends joined me, and all of a sudden that turned into cleaning the paddle boats and the rowboats. We used to have rowboats in Landa Park. And then it turned into cleaning the glass bottom boats, the rowboats, and the best part of all, did I say glass bottom boats? The paddle boats, the rowboats, and the glass bottom boat. The glass bottom boat was cool because we got to put on the scuba gear and go out there in the middle of the lake and go underneath the boat and clean it. That was a lot of fun. But one day David walks up to us and he goes, hey guys, this is great and all. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, but I can't keep paying you. I don't know, something about labor laws or something. And so I was like, that's a bummer. And so I'm over at my neighbor's house. I'm kind of complaining to him about this. And he goes, well, why don't you just start your own business? Then he's not having to pay minors. Now, I think he was joking, but he didn't realize who he was talking to. So I go marching down to Landa Park. I walk straight up to David, and I said, hey, I tell you what, Ryan's cleaning service is willing to clean all 3, the paddle boats, the rowboats, and the glass bottom boats for $20. How does that sound? Now, I think he was on to me, but just to amuse me, he let us finish out that summer. And that summer I learned a ton of responsibility. Because he allowed us to do that, every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, that was 2 hours before they opened, me and my friends were there to clean boats every Tuesday, all summer long. And I learned what responsibility was. And that was a great lesson for me. All because a neighbor, David, was willing to sit down with me and say, hey, don't give up. Don't let go so easily. Try another angle. Try something a little bit different. Probably one of the strongest lessons I learned from my neighbor was, it started, my brother was 7 years older than me. And he was kind of like a father figure to me when my dad wasn't around. He's the one that actually got me into building model cars, and then by this time he was in high school, and he would bring a vehicle home on the weekend, and he and I would take the engine out of a vehicle, rebuild it, and put it back in the same weekend. And I couldn't do that now, but that was a lot of fun for a young kid to be able to do. And one day my brother comes home and he says, hey, we're going to go to the Crystal Chandelier tonight to listen to my ag teacher. And I didn't even know what ag was at the time. But I thought, what is an ag teacher doing singing at the Crystal Chandelier? But hey, I get to go to the dance hall with my brother. Let's go. So we went and we listened to this ag teacher, and we went back and listened to him several more times, and he was all right. But one day my mom comes home, and she has her friends Judy and Roxy with her, and Roxy's just infatuated with this new country star that's playing at the Bluebonnet Palace, and we're going to go see him. So we all hop in the car, we go to the Bluebonnet Palace, and we go to see this guy. And what's crazy is when we get there, I realize it's the same ag teacher my brother took me to see. But he's charging $10 a person. And I remember looking at my mom and going, who does this guy think he is? So we listened to him, and he was all right. But he must have done something well, because when I broke up with my high school girlfriend, I get in my car, and there's a cassette tape in my car that had this song on it. Nobody in his right mind would have left her. Even my heart was smart enough to stay behind. Now, that girlfriend obviously wasn't the right girl, but that song went on to reach number 1 on the charts. And most artists work their entire life to reach number 1 just one time. But this ag teacher from Canyon High School who went to Southwest Texas State University, he had 60 number 1 hits. 60. Some of you know who I'm talking about. Here's what's crazy. If you Google right now, this is the crazy, stupid part about AI. If you Google who has the most number 1 hits, this guy's name doesn't come up. The Beatles come up with 20. Next to that is Rihanna with 19. This guy had 60 number 1 hits. So, just a quick interjection. When I was a junior, or right after my junior year, I had a car accident that almost took my life. I was at Fort Sam Houston for 10 days, and the important part about that is that that impacted me, because I almost lost my life, and it really impacted me. And so go back to this ag teacher. June 25th, 1986. His 13-year-old daughter was in a car accident and died. And that really hit me hard. That really impacted me. Because one, I'd watched this guy start as an ag teacher and grow into a country superstar. And then I took it very personal that his young daughter just died in a car accident in a place that I was almost every day. And it was just very personal to me. And my neighbor came over and sat down with me, and he said, hey, Kelly, his daughter, Kelly told me you were kind of upset about this. And I was like, well, man, that's just, it's hard. And he told me that nobody's bigger than life. See, I thought this guy was bigger than life. He said, nobody's bigger than life. Life happens to all of us. And George Strait still puts his Wranglers on one leg at a time. That's an important lesson to me. That no matter what we accomplish, no matter who we are, no matter how big we think we get, we're still subject to life. We're still subject to what's going on around us. And that was an important lesson for me to learn. So these are the kind of things that really shaped who I am. I'm gonna fast forward now that I met the love of my life, and we get to do life together. We have a business together where we get to go to organizations and we get to influence people face to face, one-on-one, leading people into their best version of life. God put on my heart many years ago to help people be better than they ever thought they could be. And for me personally, the way that we do that, the way that Bridget and I get to do that, is to sit with people one-on-one and lead them into the life that God has for them. I personally believe that God has a plan for me, a plan that was written before I was ever born, and He has a plan for everybody before they were ever born. And our job is to discover that plan. And Bridget and I get to walk people through discovering the plan that was written for them. And it's an absolutely amazing life, and I love it. I love to do what we do. And I've had my I've had my challenges with God in this business. When we first started our business, I thought, well, God, I wanted to be. I was an executive pastor of a large church in the Rio Grande Valley before we started this, and I left that to start this business. And I thought, God, I wanted to be in the full-time ministry. And one day God said, you are in the full-time ministry, and companies are paying you to pastor their people. I'm like, whoa, that's a much better perspective. January 3rd of 2025, I sat down with my wife and I said, I believe God's calling me to run for Congress. Now, those of you that know me know that I've run before because I felt God called me to before. But I thought I'd never run again. I thought, well, okay, God, I was obedient. I did that. Never again. And God put it on my heart to run for Congress. Now, I wrestled with him for a couple of weeks before I even admitted it to my wife. But as we're sitting there, she said, well, why would you do it? Would you do it for God? Would you do it for man? Or would you do it for you? And I sat there thinking about that for a minute, thinking, well, it's obedience. But what really hit me, I looked at her and I said, it's my purpose. It's the reason God put me here. If I can help other people find God's plan for their life, then I better be able to find my own. And I said, it's my purpose. And we talked through that, and I still struggled with that a little bit. But then I went and registered for Congressional District 35 because that's exactly the district God put on my heart. He said, you're going to run for 35. And I thought, well, I don't know. Because at that time, Congressional District 35 went from downtown Austin straight down the interstate in downtown San Antonio. And it's a very, very liberal district. And I'm very conservative. I grew up in a conservative German community, and I'm very conservative. And I thought, I can't win that district. But I knew God put it on my heart, and so we went and registered to run for Congressional District 35, and we began praying. God, we need a miracle. God, we need you to show up on election day and somehow give me more votes than my opponent. Which would have been a miracle. 2 months in, all of a sudden we start hearing these rumors about redistricting. It's like, what are we talking about? I called Senator Campbell's office. I called my rep, which is Alan Schoolcraft's office. Nobody was returning my phone calls. Nobody would talk about it. And I was like, what is going on here? Finally, a friend of mine who's very involved in politics sends me a map. And he says, this is the map that they're trying to push through. I looked at that map and tears started running down my face. Because it's as if God laid a map of Texas down in front of me and said, draw the district you want. This district, District 35, is now Guadalupe County, which is where my wife and I live, Karnes County, Wilson County, and South and East Bexar County. I live in Guadalupe County. We have very, very good relationships and support in both Karnes County and Wilson County, and I was a youth pastor in South Bexar County. This is my district that God created just for me. And I thought, wow, God didn't wait till election day to do a miracle. And so that's why I'm running for office, because God told me to. And more and further from that is our country's in trouble. We are under a cultural attack. Now, my wife and I get to go into organizations and reshape the culture of an organization. Now, that's where we're very, very blessed, is because we get to create Christian cultures within secular organizations. But our country is under attack from Islam, from the welfare state that's destroying families, from our education system that's teaching kids just crazy stuff. Bridget and I testified to the State Board of Education a few years ago. And at the time, I was 51, I believe. And as a 51-year-old man, I was embarrassed. I think there was probably 4 or 5 of us. Testimonies from, I think it was 10 a.m. until 9 o'clock that evening. Testimonies all day long. And I think there were 5 of us that testified to keep this progressive, liberal health care education out of our school systems. All of the rest of the testimonies were 20-year-old girls, 25-year-old girls, 30-year-old crazy looking men. I mean, it was crazy, and I was embarrassed that 20-year-old girl after 20-year-old girl after 20-year-old girl stood in front of a microphone and said that these kindergartners need to learn how to clean their sex toys. In public school. Our country is under attack, and we need to get busy and save it. So I share all these stories with you because this is an amazing group of people. When I've talked to some of you, I've looked to you face to face, and I've heard your stories, and I think about what's represented in this room, and I think, wow, we need you. You are who we need. Because you've lived the life, you've seen better, you've fought for this country, and now we need you to fight for this country. You've got children, you've got grandchildren, some of you even have great-grandchildren that need you, that need your wisdom, that need your words, that need your guidance. Some of you think, well, man, I've been retired and, my best days are behind me. No, they're not. Your best days are ahead of you. Because I, for one, am not willing to let go, or I'm not willing to give up on this country. And I know that we can change it one person at a time. Jesus gathered up 12 unlikely guys, and he's changed the world. We can start with our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren, and we can change the world. We can start with our neighbors, and we can change the world. If you would just be willing to sit down with somebody and say, hey, what are you thinking? Tell me about what you do when you head home from school. Tell me about your life. What do you like? What do you not like? And look for opportunities to steer people in the right direction. That's how we're going to save this country. It's not by 435 guys sitting in the House of Representatives trying to decide on the next law. It's about you and I reaching out to the kid next door and saying, hey, how can I help shape your life? I'm Ryan Krause. I really appreciate you guys. And if you're willing to support, what I need more than anything is prayer. If you will pray for our campaign, pray for me, and keep our country in your prayers. Thank you so much.